Hello, podcast fam. I am thrilled to share some exciting news. My book, So Grow Lead, is officially live on Amazon. This book is more than just my story of starting a nonprofit and building a peanut butter factory in Malawi. So trust me, the ups and downs of that journey are worth the read. It's also packed with practical strategies to help nonprofit leaders like you tackle challenges with clarity, courage, and a whole lot of heart. If you've ever wondered how to turn your vision into reality, navigate the inevitable hurdles, and build something meaningful, whether in your organization or in your own life, this book is for you. I'd be so grateful for your support in spreading the word. Grab your copy of So Grow Lead in the show notes and on Amazon today. Let's keep sowing seeds of impact together. Welcome to the Lead with Heart podcast, which is dedicated to nonprofit leaders who are passionate about making a difference. I'm your host, Haley Cooper, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on a journey of growth, inspiration, and transformation. At Lead with Heart, we believe that leading with heart means embracing empathy, compassion, and authenticity in every aspect of our work. It's about putting people first, fostering genuine connections, and creating a positive impact that goes beyond numbers and metrics. In the nonprofit world, it can often feel like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. The challenges are immense and the road can be lonely. But here, you're not alone. This podcast is a community where we support each other, share our stories, and learn together. Each episode will dive into personal and professional development topics tailored specifically for nonprofit leaders. From innovative fundraising strategies and effective team management to self-care practices and leadership insights, we're here to provide you with practical strategies that you can apply to your life and work. My goal is to empower you, elevate your leadership, and engage your heart in all that you do. I want to help you navigate the unique challenges of the nonprofit sector with confidence and resilience, so you can continue to create meaningful change in the world. So whether you're driving to a meeting, taking a break, or winding down for the day, tune in and join us on this journey. Together we'll discover what it truly means to lead with heart. Thank you for being here. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lead with Heart podcast. This is your host, Haley Cooper, and I am very excited to have Elliot on the podcast. He is the president and co-founder of A Brighter Day, a nonprofit organization devoted to preventing teen suicide by offering vital mental health resources for teens and families. He is a man who has transformed unimaginable loss into a powerful mission of hope. And at the heart of Elliot's work is a deep understanding of the silent battles so many young people face and a heartfelt commitment to making sure no family feels alone in their struggle. Today, we're going to talk about what they offer, like free mental health toolkits, community events, and crisis support, which now reaches thousands of families. I think you were telling me like 3,000 to 4,000 families a month, which is amazing. Helping teens navigate stress, depression, and the pressure of growing up in today's world. Well, Elliot, thank you for joining us and sharing your heart today.
Haley, it is great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
You co-founded A Brighter Day after a heartbreaking loss of your son, Jake, at 19. Can you, if you're willing, to take us back to that time and, what drove you to start the organization and how did you begin channeling your grief into something so impactful?
Thanks for asking me, Haley. So my son, back in 2015, no drugs, no alcohol, a sophomore at the University of Montana, walked up to the highway, waited for a truck to come by and jumped in front of it and took his life. And we flew up there to claim his body and bring it back to Northern California, which is where we live. Horrible experience. I don't wish that on anybody, just horrible. And we started looking for him the night before. We knew he was already dead. We were looking for him the night before because Federal Express showed up at 6:30 at night with a 6-page suicide note for us. And it said, "Mom and Dad, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I never would have told you how I felt. I never would have asked for your help. And I never would have taken your help." And that note I kept reading. It was 6 pages, but that was the main paragraph. I kept reading that over and over again. I knew on the way home, I turned to his mom and I said, we have to do something to stop other families from going through the devastation and the destruction that we are about to go through. It was horrible because we were not in mourning, we were in shock. We got into mourning pretty fast, but we got into shock first. And so I've started charities. I've worked with charities my whole life. I knew we had to do it. We came up with the idea of bringing resources on stress, depression to teens and their families using music. And we started originally taking the concept of Battle of the Bands, and we'd have concerts all over the Bay Area, and we'd give out these backpacks filled with resources, and they weren't ending up on the ground. So something was happening that was good. And then COVID hit, and we had to reinvent ourselves. So the idea was still to get resources to families, resources to teens, resources to the parents of these teens, because that's sometimes the best way to reach them, in every way that works for teens and their families. And that's what we'll be doing now for 9 years. And so today we're touching 3,000 to 6,000 families every single month with various resources.
Wow. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. And I'm just honored that you would share with me and our listeners. And as someone who has experienced that as well, I know I can only imagine the unimaginable loss of a child. And I'm so grateful that you are using your voice and becoming an important one in the mental health space and continuing to impact lives across the world. And teen suicide is now the second leading cause of death among young people, especially those 10 to 14, which I was reading yesterday. What are some of the most common warning signs of depression or emotional distress in teens that parents, educators, and peers often overlook?
Well, that's a great question, and that's written all over our website under resources. But here's where some of the most common things happen with teens. The first thing that a teen does is isolate themselves. So try to imagine that the teen's life is a box, and it's got 6 sides, 4 walls, a top and a bottom. And little by little, that box is going from blue or green, a nice color, an upbeat color, to gray, and then eventually to black. And when all those walls turn black, all those crevices are black, that's when a teen says, well, my life stinks, or uses a more expletive word. Tomorrow was bad. Today's even worse. Tomorrow, and then it's going to get only worse from here. No one's going to miss me anyway. And that's suicide. So what a teen does to begin with is they isolate themselves socially, start withdrawing from their friends. They definitely withdraw from their family. They withdraw from happier times, which is why January and February are the top 2 months for suicide for teens, because they were started withdrawing on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and they just couldn't take it anymore. So they don't want to be part of something happy. They don't want to be part of the sports scene anymore if they were in that, or the music scene. They just would prefer to be alone. Then they stop doing homework, because why would you do homework if you don't think there's going to be a better tomorrow? Then they stop having conversations with their family. So you start getting conversations that are monosyllabic. How was your day today? Fine. What's going on at school? Nothing. How are you doing with your best friend, Jimmy? Fine. You don't know anything at the end of these conversations. And that's all part of it. Sometimes they have eating disorders. They simply don't want to eat anymore. Like, why am I bothering to eat? I don't even like this stuff. Or they eat way too much because that's just as bad. So it's not a binge and purge. It's that they're not hungry. They want to stay in a room and they want to just watch videos. They just don't want to be part of anything or anybody. That's what happens primarily with teens. It's a little bit different than seniors that have the problem. But for teens, leave me alone, get off my case. I just want to be left alone.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I would love to know the role of social media in this. Obviously, I didn't grow up with social media. I didn't get it until I was in college, and Instagram came way after. And I was reading a story this morning it popped up on my news feed of an influencer who had built a following on social media. And she had recently lost a bunch of followers and ended up committing suicide because of the lack of worth that she felt from, according to this news article, of building your worth on likes and follows and hearts. So what is the role of social media in anxiety and depression among teens nowadays?
Well, we have to be realistic, Haley, that Facebook, they don't really use Facebook, but Instagram, these are highlight reels of everybody's life. Mm-hmm. They always tell the really good, not the real life situation, but the really good. It even was so bad once that my kids came home from school And this was Christmas time. And we live in Lafayette. It's an affluent area. And they said, Dad, are we the only family that doesn't go to Lake Tahoe or Hawaii for Christmas vacation? Because that's how they felt. Everybody's posting these cool pictures, but not my kids. Even though they had a great vacation, they still weren't posting that stuff. So that's what social media is. It posts highlight reels, and it makes kids feel even worse because they're not having as good of a time as the perception they have of their friends. So now their family isn't really cool anymore. Their mom's kind of boring. Their dad's kind of boring. Dad works too much. Mom does this too much. It's all part and parcel of they're putting together a scenario that's not very healthy. So the best thing you could do as a parent from now on is when you have dinner is no more cell phones, no more texting, no more calling grandma or calling older sibling at college, nothing. Every meal should be dedicated to talking. So leave your social media out of dinner, leave it out of the car, leave it out of walks that you take with your children. Those are the big three things. And learn how to communicate. Like in the old days when you were young, Haley, and your mom said, so what's going on with your friend Jenny? Because she really cared. But now we don't have that conversation because you're taking your kid from one event to another, or dinner is a rush. It's Stouffer's lasagna, hurry up and eat. You got homework to do. You got to get in the shower. Let's go. And that's what's ruining it for every team.
Imagine a fundraising partner that not only helps you raise more money, but also supports you in retaining your donors. A partner that helps you raise funds both online and on location so you can grow your impact faster. That's DonorBox, a comprehensive suite of tools, services, and resources that give fundraisers just like you a custom solution to tackle your unique challenges, helping you achieve the growth and sustainability your organization needs, helping you help others. Visit donorbox.org to learn more.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And I have 3 young kids. And so I've tried to make an intentional time where I'm just not on my phone. My phone's in another room so that I can really have those. I mean, they're young, but they like to talk a lot. And no matter what they're talking about, right? As you can at 5, 3, and 2. But having that intentional time of conversation and around the dinner table, talking about highlights or challenges that they've faced through the day. And I've also heard that there is a next level of bullying that happens online. So there's this epidemic of cyberbullying that happens. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that influences along with obviously having that need to compare yourself or not feeling good enough, and then people exacerbating that by bullying you online?
And bullying is a really big thing. People laugh at that, but it is big, and it's on our website because it is a leading cause of suicide. So here's how this works. I decided I don't like what you're wearing, and I don't like you. I start picking on what you're wearing. Now, there could be nothing wrong with what you're wearing. It's not about that you wear the worst colors in the world or the weirdest things or you buy them at the thrift store. None of that might be true. I just don't really care for you, and I feel better as a bully making somebody else feel worse. So if you're already not feeling good about yourself, and somebody starts picking on you, and everything you now do is wrong, the color of your hair is wrong, the part of your hair is wrong, the color of your sweater is wrong, suddenly you just feel bad about yourself. And then this goes on day after day. And then you start reaching the point again that those 6 walls are getting dark. And then other people, your friends, are reading them. And they're starting to avoid you as well. They didn't realize that they didn't like your sweater either, color of your sweaters, which is not true at all, but now it is true. So we created an artificial scenario for certain teens who are already challenged emotionally about feeling good about themselves. And we're making them feel really bad. And you reach the point of why bother? That's what teens go through, is the why bother. You're not going to miss me anyway. I'll show you that you won't even miss this t-shirt when we're all done, or this sweater when we're all done. I'll just take it with me. And that's really sad when that happens, but it does happen more now cyber-wise than it did when I grew up, which they would just beat you up on a playground, which you could deal with. Now it's subliminal. It's now when you post something nice, I write something bad about it. So I'm even taking down your good post by writing something evil or bad about your post. None of it has to be true about you, by the way. I just don't like you. So I'm just going to pick on somebody. So I'm going to say something terrible about you. Your friends are going to start laughing at you. You become humiliated and embarrassed. You got nowhere to hide because it's on your social media. Everybody's seen it, or so it feels like it. And that's cyberbullying.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I can see it's behind a screen too. So it's less visible. When growing up, bullying was in front of teachers or in front of peers. Like, it's very vocal, but also a little bit more silent, where it's like you can't necessarily, like, a teacher would come out and break up a fight, but online it's a little bit harder to monitor. And at such a young age, when your identity is being formed, and a lot of that is from external validation, I can only imagine how malleable your beliefs become to what your peers are saying.
That's the key. We all have our issues. Look, I'm a grown-up here. I'm in my 60s. I want to know when I put a suit on, I look good.
Yeah.
So if the first person comes up to me and said, why did you wear that color of a suit? It's just not good looking on you. I'm going to be thinking about that all day long. And I know from experience, I can go home and change. I can throw it out. I don't ever wear that again. And if two people say it, oh boy, that's going to last a long time for me. But you're a teenager and 2-3 people start saying these things, and it feels like the whole world is thinking that, even though they may not be.
Yeah, I mean, we're human. Of course, we'd feel that way. And for parents listening who feel helpless or unsure of how to support their teen, what are some concrete strategies that they can use to build trust, confidence, and emotional safety at home?
Okay, so the first thing you need to do, as I said earlier, is to have cell phone-free dinners. Whenever you have dinner at home, talk to each other. We put on a website at abrighterday.info. We put all a series of questions for parents to ask, because it's not just asking the old-fashioned question like my dad asked me, how was your day? And I'd answer fine. You need to know more than that. How was chemistry today? What did you guys study? What do you think of the teacher? Who's your favorite teacher? Who's your least favorite teacher and why? Who's your best friend? How's your best friend doing in chemistry? You need to ask all these things. What's your least favorite class? Gym. Why? Because I hate getting changed in front of my friends. I'm embarrassed. So now you have a body image issue going on. You just learned that. You have to ask those kind of questions to find out what's going on with your child. And those questions can be done at dinner in a very non-judgmental way. And that's the thing we as parents have a problem with, is we want to fix everything. We want to fix it. If you're having a bad time in chemistry, let me hire a tutor. But the problem may not be the material. The problem might be, I just don't like the teacher. Or I'm next to Mary. Mary's terrible to me. All she does is pick on me. Things like that you need to know. If that isn't working, because we also live in a busy world where sometimes the hardest thing to do is to have dinner together, then when you're driving them, no earbuds, no radio, and no cell phones, no texting. Put your teen in a front seat with you and just talk. Same questions. Find out what's going on. If they don't want to answer you, Haley, then talk about their best friend. Because they sometimes would rather talk third person than talk first person. And they might say, you know, my friend Haley, well, she really hates chemistry. And what they're really talking about is themselves. So that's number 2. And number 3, we are, as humans, are trained to walk and talk at the same time. So once a week, take a cell phone-free walk with your teen, 30 minutes, an hour, 45 minutes, around a reservoir, around a green path, and just ask good questions without judging. Because if you think chemistry is the problem and say, listen, do you think it would help you if I hired a tutor to help you with chemistry? Or is there something else going on that you want to talk about? Find that out.
Yeah.
Good time to do it. So walking, eating, and driving. Those are the 3 best ways to reach your teen.
Yeah, that's great advice and very enlightening to me to really, again, from my own personal journey, set that foundation at such a young age. Your organization provides toolkits, events, and interventions across the country. Can you share more about the programs A Brighter Day offers and how you're seeing them change lives in real time?
Great. Well, number 1 is we have an enormously robust website with tremendous resources on there. I'd recommend every parent goes to abrighterday.info. But we know teens don't read these things. They're just not. So we created a program just for teens, or primarily for teens, that's a teen texting crisis hotline that works 24/7 in all 50 states. So a teen, any time of the day, middle of chemistry class if they had to, or Christmas or New Year's or anywhere, can text 74174, the word brighter, BRIGHTR, to 741-741. And in less than 5 minutes, and it's closer to 2, they will get somebody for 45 minutes that will text back and forth with them about what's going on. And these are trained psychologists that can help them with texting. And by the way, in the first 5 minutes, we almost always get the same question. Am I the only one feeling this way? Because they're so isolated. Now, texting doesn't work for everybody. They could text 24 hours a day if they needed to. They just can't text more than 45 minutes with one person. And then it moves on. So we know that there's nothing better probably than in-person counseling. It works out really well with a lot of people. But in certain towns, like here I am in the East Bay of San Francisco, it could take 6 to 10 weeks to make an appointment. So here you are, you have a teen that's thinking about cutting themselves or in some form of crisis, and you're going to tell them 10 weeks to their appointment? That's a lifetime. You're going to be scared to death as a parent. Yeah. So we created a Zoom program, teamed up with BetterHelp, and we can get them in front of a trained licensed therapist in their local state, that's it's state licensing, in less than 7 days. The parents, the kids, whatever is needed, we can put them in front of them. They still can get counseling, but there's nothing really better than in person. But Zoom is pretty darn good, and texting isn't bad from that. And that's great. And some teens just react better to this because they feel like they can say something, not be embarrassed to squirm in front of somebody. They can just say, well, I don't know if I really want to say it. You can say it now because you can always say, oh, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I do want to say it. So, and then if you need inpatient help, almost in every state, we can get them a referral. So that's really good. So between that, again, we touch 3,000 to 6,000 people every month. We get calls weekly. My child has been hurting themselves, and I didn't realize that. What's an inpatient program I can put them in? And we find something that's local. It's not always local because every state doesn't always have these things. I had to put somebody from New Jersey into Connecticut, and that was the best place for him. But in California, I have 3 places available to me that are local. So it all depends on where you are.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And yeah, I mean, it's daunting with you want help for your kids and you're trying, and then you have to wait. And it like you said, it's life or death. But you did mention a partnership with BetterHelp, and because a lot of nonprofits, CEOs listen to this. And I just had someone on the podcast talk about more like solidarity and partnerships. Like you care about teen mental health, you care together. So how are you building out, just to give advice or insight into how you're building out these partnerships, like specifically the one with BetterHelp? What does that look like? Is there an MOU? How did you access that partnership to build out that solidarity in preventing suicide in teens?
We've got a number of partnerships, especially with the inpatient programs. And so the key is with BetterHelp, somebody put us together, which was really good. They said, you guys should be working together. And they did. And the CEO, a woman CEO from Manhattan, she was just really easy to work with. And that's great. The crisis hotline, we worked with another company that specializes in hotlines and turned it into a teen crisis hotline on that. Scholarships. We put that together with another team. We're going to continue to build these partnerships because we're a small charity. And to say that I want to create a list of 10,000 counselors in all 50 states, we don't have the resources to do that. We just don't. So it's all about marketing and resources and partnerships, working with schools, high schools, leadership groups. That's what we're going to keep doing. And as long as that organizations want to work with us, and not everyone does, a lot of high schools struggle with working with outside organizations because it's not sanctioned and paid for by the Board of Education. But we're going to just keep trudging along here.
Yeah. And when we were talking yesterday, I believe we were talking about the struggles in school to support teens and their mental health. So how has the landscape changed? Is it the same? How is Brighter Day helping to advocate for teens in schools?
Some high schools are really open to us. They're like, come on in. We love what you're doing. Come talk to our teens. Come meet with our leadership groups. We'd love that. Come disseminate your information. Other schools and other principals have said, hey, I don't get paid for this. I don't get graded for this. And you're not an on-campus organization. Therefore, don't come help us. Very odd. It's still a stigma. Look, I talked to an Oakland principal, Oakland, California principal, who said, Elliot, I love what you're doing, but I just got to get through May 15th when school ends without anybody dying. That's all I care about. So I'm not going to put any effort or money into an outside program that I don't get rewarded for. So there still is a stigma about suicide. Some principals have actually said to me, what I heard when I was young, that if you go in and you talk about suicide and stopping suicide, that you're going to have people that think you're sanctioning suicide and you're making it an okay result. And that's not true at all.
Yeah, definitely. And let's talk a little bit more about the stigma and specifically with men and boys' mental health for someone who has experienced people in her life who have dealt with depression, specifically men, and also some have resulted in suicide. I feel like, can you talk a little bit more about what the stigma is and how parents and teens and friends can help and schools change the stigma around mental health?
Yeah, there is a stigma. By the way, boys commit suicide 4-1 over girls. Girls attempt suicide significantly more. They just do it more with drugs and they're rescued. Boys are much more violent, so the suicide is more permanent. It's funny, I had a counselor come in my office and we were talking and I made the comment, because I've done it so many times, I said, my son committed suicide. And I said, well, I'm not supposed to use the word commit because that sounds like a crime. And she said, that's right, you're not supposed to. I said, so my son took his own life. She said, well, you're not supposed to say that either. I said, okay, what am I supposed to say? Your son had a successful suicide. And I almost fell off my seat. I said, don't ever say that to a parent, that your child had a successful suicide or unsuccessful suicide. You know, that's a horrible thought. I said, well, that's what it is. I said, no, you think like a counselor and not like a parent. Think more like a parent. There's no parent that wants to hear the phrase successful suicide about anybody they know, much less their child. It's just a bad phrase. So the stigma of suicide is there was something wrong with that child. Drugs, divorce, alcohol, frontal lobe disorder, whatever you think it is, special needs, special trust, special ed. My kid wasn't in any of that stuff. He was just depressed. Not only was it just depressed, but obviously depressed enough to take his life. No drugs. As a matter of fact, he was anti-drugs because he was an athlete. He played in Montana on a hockey team, 2 hockey teams. He had scored 7 goals earlier that week, but that wasn't enough to stop him from taking his life. It didn't change the depression. Right? So his jersey's hanging in 2 different locations. There's a stigma that something's wrong with that child, and it should be there by the grace of God go I. Thankfully, your child took his life and not mine, because my child would never do that. And that's the stigma. So we have to get beyond that and understand that mental health, particularly depression and stress, is more prevalent than we think it is. In Lafayette, California, when I first started this charity, I convinced them to do a survey on stress and depression. And they fought it a little bit, but they decided to use an outside firm to do a survey of the high schoolers in that district. It's a pretty good-sized district. And we both thought at about 5 to 10%, 10 on a really high side, of teens would admit that they were depressed. It came at close to 50%, with most of the teens admitting that at some point during their high school career, they had thought about suicide. They're valedictorians, straight A students, B students. These are not bad people. They're not people from a broken up family. They're not people that their parents were on drugs or just deadbeats and on welfare. These are normal people going through their life not realizing that teens get depressed. And by the way, the more affluent the society, more affluent the town, the higher the rate of depression and suicide. It's not the lower rate. But if I go to here in California, Oakland and Richmond, 2 very challenged areas economically in Northern California, suicide is not the number 1 cause of death or number 2 cause of death with teens, because they're in survival mode. They've got gangs. But when you got time in your hands, like in Danville, California, very affluent town, then you've got kids saying, woe is me, I'm depressed.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the pressure of achieving as well, topped with social media. I can imagine the amount of pressure that teens feel that can lead to depression. And thank you for sharing and shedding light on the stigma. And Brighter Day has been around for almost 10 years, right? So, what has been the most, or in the future, in the next 10 years, 30 years, what are you looking forward to as a part of your mission?
So I think that my first goal is to touch as many teens as possible. There are approximately 37 million teen high schoolers today in the country. I would love for all of them, all 37 million, have our texting crisis hotline on a little card in their wallets. I would love that. That would be number one. 10 million of them will graduate this year, and 10 million new ones will come in next year, give or take. That means we're never going to run out of the ability to do this. It's touching them. If we could have billboards all around the country that say, call this number or get some Zoom help, we've really succeeded. By the way, for that Zoom help, which I forgot to mention, these counselors are paid counselors. And so they charge $75 to $150 an hour. We pick up 90 days worth of the counseling. And we do that because when we checked with BetterHelp, we found that the average teen gets out of crisis, not gets over depression, but gets out of crisis in about 90 days. So we decided that we didn't want any parent having to decide between putting food on the table for the family and putting their teen in counseling. So I think the biggest future, I don't want to say we have a bright future because that's a sad statement all by itself.
Yeah.
But we are never going to run out of work that we can do to help teens and their families understand that there are resources out there for help. And we can't stop the social media craze. It's way bigger than us.
Yeah, but by giving the education to parents, I was listening to a podcast on the book Anxious Generation, and it was talking about how not to give your teens social media until they're 18 and not giving them phones until they're 16. Yeah, seriously. When kids are already addicted to iPads and screens and that, I think educating, the more you can educate people around the dangers of social media and some of the stigmas of depression, it's a ripple effect, right? Because one person's going to hear it and they're going to share it with the next person. And then hopefully all 37 million high schoolers will know about A Brighter Day.
It's important to get the information out that there are resources for parents and teens. There's a lot of ways to get to the teens is through the parents. It's important that they realize that it's not a dead end. It's not like when they grew up. My mom was very sick in high school. And so I really didn't get the benefit of my mother until my senior year. So my dad was working all the time. And when he was home, he had to take care of my mother. And so he said to me, he said, look, if your grades don't suffer, don't go down because you're going to go to college. You're on a track for that. I was playing high school football. If you don't mess up, I'm not going to really be on your case. So don't mess up because I got a lot of things on my plate and don't let your grades go down. So he would come home. He'd say, hey, how was school today? And I would answer like a caveman, shrug my shoulders and say, okay, which is how boys answer most times. And then he would go off and have to take care of my mother or work. He was busy. I made him dinner for the two. I made dinner for the two of us when I wasn't at practice, or I'd come home from practice and make dinner. That was my thing for him, as I would cook for him, because I think he would have burnt the house down because he didn't know how to work the stove. Different generation. But he never really went into what's happening at school there. When I was really frustrated, my mom was sick, and I was just frustrated. It was a Saturday night, and I was home, and I was pacing the house, going out of my mind in 10th grade. And I was just in between friends. I was losing my boyhood friends because I really didn't want to hang around them because I was starting to like girls, and they still wanted to play ping pong and pool every Friday and Saturday night. And I was getting beyond that. And my new friends, I was not quite in with them yet. I knew them at school, but I wasn't hanging out with them. And so he said to me, he asked a really good question. Who's your best friend right now? Because he said, you know, what's going on? I told him a little bit. I'm frustrated. And I'm sure it was like a tiger in a cage. And I said, well, I got nowhere to go tonight. He said, well, what's your best friend doing? I said, well, that's Richie. And he said, it's not Leonard or Stuart? I said, no, we were kind of broken away from each other. And he didn't even know that. He said, well, what's Richie doing tonight? And I said, he's at some party with a bunch of guys. They go every weekend to parties. I said, well, why don't you call him up and go to the party next weekend with him? He didn't know anything about the group or the parties or good or bad or indifferent or drugs or alcohol or anything. Just said, go with them. And that changed my life in high school. That social group that they belonged to, I became a leader, was in leadership with them. Changed my life. But it was my dad not even understanding how good that question was and how good his answer was. You don't know, but he asked, who's your best friend? He didn't even know that, but he asked and I answered.
Yeah, such a simple question can have such a profound impact on the way that you live your day-to-day life or approach your day-to-day life. And you have grown over the 10 years a Brighter Day from a personal passion project into a vital nonprofit reaching up to 6,000 each month. What leadership lessons have been most important in scaling your impact and sustaining your mission?
Oh, leadership lessons. That's another great question, Haley. It means you have to be the driver at all times, and you have to understand that people around you are not going to be as passionate because it wasn't their child that died, or maybe they don't even know somebody, or maybe they think a cousin or something like that, but it's never going to hit home like you. So you got to keep telling your story. People have, my kids especially, have criticized me and said, Dad, you can't keep telling the story of Jake because it eats you up at some point. It's not healthy to keep doing that. So when I need to, I go to the cemetery and I get grounded, and the scenery is the same, the conversation is the same, but it grounds me. But I know if I keep telling the story over and over, that we're going to have an impact on families around us. And that story is the driver, the driving force behind here. So leadership is about telling the story, even if it makes you feel horrible, and about inviting people to join your mission.
Yeah, definitely. If people want to learn more about the work that you do at A Brighter Day, where can they find you?
Two great places. It's abrighterday.info or Elliot, ELLIOT, at abrighterday.info. Cell is 510-206-1103. I'm on the West Coast, so don't call me at 2 a.m, but I do get those calls.
Well, thank you so much, Elliot. We will make sure to link to all of that in the show notes. I have truly I'm just so inspired by you and your commitment to helping teen mental health. And I am just so grateful for this conversation.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, Haley. Remember, the key is you want to help a teen, as you're doing a great job with what you're doing. You want to help a teen. Great communications is your friend.
And that's across all things in life, right?
Yes, it is.
If you have valued these stories or learned something from what you've heard, please share this podcast episode or follow me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your support, and together we can build a better community and world.